Hottie, it was great to get to Leadville, even though there was no race this year. It's just such a magical place, and it puts me in a great mood. And it's really the only time I get worked up about everything is the night before a race. And then, as you've seen, the nerves go up to 11. And when I have nights like that, the pre-race anxiety nights, I have a product close by that you can also get in Leadville. And that is, of course, Floyd's of Leadville Rest and Recovery CBD.
Yeah, me too. Being in Leadville just overall brings this great sense of being, a calmness. I just love being there. Before we started recording, we were talking about some of our favorite places in Leadville. I love Chicken Hill, love being on top of that hill. But like you, I mean, the night before a race, things can get a little tense, and that's why I too am glad to have Floyd's at the ready. Now, by the way, Floyd's headquarters is that big white house on Highway 24. They live up to their name. They are Floyd's of Leadville. They're right there on Highway 24 as you're coming in from the north, right there at 11th Street. So like 5-6 blocks from the starting line. And they've been in that spot for like 4 or 5 years now. So when I'm driving into Leadville, that is the landmark. The Floyd's of Leadville, a big white house. That's the landmark that says to me, you're here again.
Yep. It is one of the things that I look for as well, that you see the Safeway, and then there's Floyd's of Leadville, and across the street from there, the liquor store. But it's always just, so great to get there. And of course, inside of the Floyd's of Leadville building, there's the full supply of Floyd's products, including my evening of race favorite, the 50 milligrams full spectrum soft gels. Those really help sort of take the edge off, help sort of smooth the anxiety a little bit so that you can get, hopefully, a little bit of sleep the night before that race.
Now, the Floyd's retail location is not open right now, so it doesn't even matter whether you're in Leadville or anywhere else, as long as you have access to this thing they call the internet, where, amongst other things, companies have set up pages and offer their wares via electronic transaction. Floyd's is there and has a robust site where you can find all of their offerings. Is it better in Leadville? Well, of course it is. Everything is. But for now, head on over to floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount.
Yeah, and thanks, as always, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It's season 3, episode 20 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I'm Eldon, and I am stepping on Hottie. Please feel free to call me Fatty. Well, one of us did make it to Leadville this summer, and one of us rode the course, and we're going to skip the suspense, and I'm just going to tell you that one person was me. Like all the years in the last 24, I had big plans, just like all of you, to be there for the race. And when the race was canceled, I started making plans for 2021. And while the race has been really great about refunds and transfers, that has not necessarily so much been the case for lodging. Without pointing too many fingers, I'll just say that I had rented the place before the pandemic happened, and I was basically put in the place where I was either going to eat my rental fee or use the place. So I loaded up my truck with 6 bikes, no lie, and Lisa and I went for the latter. We decided to make this week a little getaway and a chance to do what I don't think either of us have ever done before. And that was ride the whole course, just her and me, totally self-supported. It was crazy.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing about that. And certainly something a lot of us have thought about, and a few of us have even tried, that is going at that thing solo. Pretty crazy effort. But before you get to your DIY Leadville 100, I wanted to follow up on a couple of items from previous episodes. Item 1, this goes back to our interview with Frank Matson, CEO of Citizen Pictures, the folks who made the Race Across the Sky movies. We mentioned how great that 2010 film was because they did such a great job telling the stories of regular Leadville racers. Racers like Fatty, of course, who was in the movie, and other racers that we mentioned, some of the folks they focused on. Prior to the interview, we went back and watched the film, and the racers highlighted just seemed to be so alive as you watch that 2010 film. Fact of the matter is, some of them are not, and we feel badly for failing to mention that. First and foremost, Grace Ragland. She passed away in January, folks. She had MS, but also did a battle or maybe 2 battles with cancer. So thoughts and prayers, even though they're delayed, go out to Grace. And another person we mentioned in regards to that 2010 film was her good friend, John Paul Dunbar. He was the guy with ALS. He was also in the Race Across the Sky movie, 2010. He died back in 2013. So I just thought it was a gap in our coverage there. We should have mentioned that those 2 people are no longer with us, and we wanted to, Fatty, say we wanted to at least honor them in that way, that they were great people. It was great to see them in the film, and we hope people will keep them in their thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's a good call to call that out. I will also say that if there could be a better tribute to a couple of really great, funny, smart, energetic people, I don't know what it is. That movie captured what little I knew of them and the times that I had met each of them in a big way. And so, it's really nice to have something like that to capture people who have passed.
Item number 2, something I want to clear up. In fact, I said this during the single speed episode. It was a small mistake and kind of funny when I listened back. When talking about converting a 9er to single speed, I said concentric bottom bracket when I meant to say biocentric BB. Biocentric is a type of eccentric bottom bracket designed for single speeders to adjust chain tension at the crank in lieu of a sliding rear axle. Where did I get concentric? Who knows? Well, the word has to do with tension, I guess, as in concentric muscle contraction. There's tension created, but there's no such thing as a concentric bottom bracket. My bad.
Well, there's a market opportunity. It would be a good name for a thing, but eccentric, concentric, hey, it all just comes down to pedaling circles. And the fact is, you said it with such conviction, I actually wondered if I was the one who's getting it wrong. So Hadi should have just not said anything, just go with it.
Yeah, I like to own up a little bit here. Another flashback here. A couple shows ago, we spent an inordinate amount of time talking about the DNA bibs that some of you may have gotten with our Leadville kit. There was a lot of, in quotation marks, pocket talk due to the short's useful side and back pockets.
Yeah, and the fact is, like most riders, like most of our listeners, we're obsessed with bibs. We are, and we can prove it. Because what we failed to get into were the basics of any bib. And that is the fabric, the straps, and the chamois.
Yep, we're owning it again here, folks. We're following up. The basics here regarding bibs. We should have gotten to that. The essentials. I mean, you can't have bibs without Lycra, padding, and a support system, right? So let me just say about the chamois of the DNA bibs. I appreciate what DNA has done here. The padding is just thick enough and firm enough to prevent a severe bashing of the sit bones. It's one thing to put a thick pad in, but if the pad is too squishy, then who cares, right? You need some resistance down there. The straps are another highlight on these bibs. I love the way they have no seams, just flat straps with little vent holes in them. That's exactly what the DNA gravel bibs have. Finally, the material. This Lycra has a compressive quality. When they are new, you may slip them on and go, oh, whoa, wait, these feel tight. But just give them a few rides, you'll be fine. The fit reminds me of another well-known Italian brand that I have loved as well.
Yeah, it's actually really fun to hear you talk about DNA bibs. I've been wearing DNA bibs for so long that you get used to something that you really like and you forget that it's exceptional. And that's what these DNA bibs are. And whether it's the gravel bibs, the types, which are Leadville ones are based on, or any of the DNA bibs that I've ridden with. They are just high quality bibs, high quality jerseys. I've just been such a fan for so long. DNA stuff, I should say, is all designed in USA, but it's made in Italy. And so you're getting this world-class fit with old world-class craftsmanship. That is the old world craftsmanship, I should say. And if you like to get the great DNA kit, and want to have your own design in it, DNA is offering a 10% discount to our listeners All you got to do is go to dnacycling.com, and in the custom apparel inquiry page, you choose other where it says, where did you hear about us? And type Leadville Podcast. Get a good discount, get your own look, get a great kit.
We are recording this show on the day that was supposed to be Buckle Day. That's the Sunday after the LT100 race, where most everyone reports to the Leadville High School gym to pick up the hardware earned from the day prior. Well, there was no ceremony today, but there was an impromptu Leadville 100 yesterday, the original 2020 race date.
Yeah, by my count, there were about 50 people who were at 6th and Harrison for that 6:30 a.m. start. And that start had some of the normal sights and sounds of the race that we know and love.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yep, that very recognizable shotgun blast sound, that was actually Ken, and Marilee was there too. And I was not one of the people who was racing it or riding it. I don't know what to call it, but there were a few people who were doing it there. And tough day.
Mm-hmm. Looked like a tough day. It was a little smoky in Leadville. There have been some fires in the area, but
oh yeah.
Did you get any idea of the finisher rate out of that group?
I was out of the area when people were finishing. Lisa and I actually went on a little mountain bike ride where we discovered what happens if instead of turning left and going up Sugarloaf on Hagerman's, you just keep on going. Turns out there's some amazing single track, and Hagerman's Pass is crazy, but I did a little bit of Strava stalking afterward, and it looked to me like maybe 10 to 15 people of that 50 finished. So, I mean, with all the smoke, I can't blame them for saying, hey, let's take care of our lungs. There's no buckle on the line.
Yeah, that's right. Good call there. Okay. Well, like we said, Fatty, you and the Hammer were in Leadville the past few days, but you did not go out there to join this Saturday group ride that we just mentioned. Why were you there, and what did you do?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, we were there partially because, we had a place that we had paid for, and we already had the days reserved off in our jobs. And we live about a 7-hour drive, and thought, well, let's go and see what happens if we, instead of having a crew or a race, if we just go and try to ride the course. And so on Tuesday after work, we loaded up our stuff and drove to Leadville. And we stopped at Twin Lakes Dam. We had to actually go out that direction over Independence Pass because I-70 had been closed because of the Glenwood Canyon fire. And we just dropped off an ice chest. It in some aspen trees, kind of halfway hidden, and then got to Leadville, went to bed, and then started what would have been on Wednesday morning my 24th Leadville 100 course start. Whether it was going to be my finish or not, that remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. So it's just the two of you, right? Going out together on this ride? How early in the morning?
Yeah. So we had Lisa's son, Blake, who was with us as well. The next day, Lisa's daughter and her boyfriend, they were coming in as well. But for the day itself, for Wednesday, it was just Lisa and me. And we were just going to ride it. We weren't planning to have any kind of crew for it. And, I got to say, I did think about you a couple of times, Hadi. It's the first, I will say, and I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself here, but I wished for a master crew like you and Veronica at Twin Lakes Dam when we first got there. And then, kind of following in that thought of a spoiler, I got into a pretty bad headspace during this day. And I'm going to talk about that a fair amount more. But I remember while I was having a rough time, I thought to myself, oh, Hadi, his one piece of advice for me was get some audio. And I didn't. I was in a bad mental space, and I was like, I'm just not going to get audio. So you're going to hear my story, but the parts where I asked Lisa how she was doing and so forth, and with me and the mic, it didn't happen because I was in too bad of a mood. So a little bit of a preview there. So apologies, Hadi. That said, we wanted to ride on Wednesday, not the scheduled race day, because mostly I knew that there were going to be a lot of people possibly on the course, and I just didn't want to be in the way. And I just, I was worried that the smoke was going to get worse, and I think that did turn out to work in our benefit. I think Lisa and I saw maybe 2 people on bikes during that Wednesday. And with the COVID concerns and all of that, it was just easier for us to do it on a different day and really do it by ourselves. So we rolled out at 6:30 in the morning-ish, maybe a few minutes early, and just, started our GPSs and rolled away from the Airbnb. And it feels very, very different. It's just, how when you, on the morning of the race, you wake up and it's always before the alarm goes off, and you're like, immediately you're at like 70% in anxiety and excitement, and you're getting ready and you're running around and doing everything, even though you've been prepared for weeks. It wasn't like that. It's like, just getting ready like for a ride, because that's kind of what it was. And eventually I was like, are you ready? I'm ready. Okay. And we roll out, and we rolled across the Harrison starting line. And, it's interesting to, instead of roll to the starting line, stopping and working your way into a corral and feeling the excitement build and build and build as you get close to 6:30, instead to roll to the start line and then just kind of keep going. So there was, in this case, it was, I'm reaching for words here, Hadi, but it was weird. I mean, it's hard to say more than, it felt kind of surreal, kind of sad, and a lot of the excitement and motivation that you normally have for that race, it was definitely missing. Mm-hmm.
Had you guys set a goal or anything? Did you have any idea how long you might be out there? Did you have any expectations?
Well, we kind of did. So, Lisa's son, Blake, was with us, and he had brought an e-bike. And so he was planning to ride up St. Kevin's and then, down the pavement and, maybe up the dirt part of, or, the part of Hagerman's, and then just, see how his battery was doing to see whether he went up Sugarloaf. But the 3 of us were talking as we were going down, and we said, maybe 10 and a half hours. Lisa is a sub-9 racer at Leadville 100. I'm more often a sub-9 racer myself. And so we thought, we're not going to really be going for it. So we're going to shoot for 10 and a half hours, give us plenty of time to just kind of lollygag and maybe take a few pictures. So we were thinking like that. Now, I was on my single speed. And so right off the bat, we kind of found out something that we've never really noticed on long rides before. And that is, it is hard for a single speed and a geared bike to stay together. Your strengths are very, very different. It's like, as soon as we started going up St. Kevin's, I was, on a single speed. I don't know if you've ever ridden a single speed up St. Kevin's. It's either you were going full gas or you were off your bike. It is a very tough climb, and it is doable on a single speed, but not if you don't really lean into it. And so, I lost Lisa and Blake. They were just, they were way behind me. I got to the hairpin and, wait for them for a few minutes. And then they got there and we rode together. And as soon as there was anything flat, she would just disappear from me. And so we were having a rough time staying together and winding up being, we were going at the pace of whichever bike was slower than the other one. But we wanted to ride this together. And it was a little bit, and so single speed and geared bike, it was a little bit, back and forth, kind of crazy. And I found that I was getting tired a lot faster than I had expected to.
Were you able to figure out why?
Fitness.
Okay. I thought maybe there was something to do with the pacing or something like that. Fitness. Yeah, fitness will do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and pacing, fitness, and this is the first time that in a long time, that I hadn't given myself some time to get acclimated to the altitude. I mean, I don't know if I gave the exact timeline, but we got into Leadville at about 8 p.m. And by 6:30 p.m. or 6:30 a.m., we were starting this course. So in less than 12 hours from when we got to Leadville, we were starting this course. And, I think I was tired, to be honest. And I was not used to the altitude. And I was just, I was having a rough time. And lack of race motivation. It is a tough thing to be riding as something that has always felt like you've got an extra boost of energy because of the racers around you and the spectators who are on either side of you, and the fact that you have been caring and thinking about and training for every day for 10 months or whatever, kind of pushing you along and just doing it as a ride. So it was very, very different energy than normal.
Yeah, it's the old fight or flight issue. I mean, it's like a lot of folks who have problems doing intervals alone outdoors. It's a very, especially high intensity intervals. It's a tough ask because you're trying to create something. You're trying to fabricate a feeling, right, to get you to go as hard as possible. And when it's just not there, when the carrot's not there, some of us just tend to go, maybe 75% is fine as opposed to 100. So I get that. Totally get that.
Yeah. And I will say that all of that said, I feel like maybe I'm just being too much of a downer here, because the fact is Leadville is beautiful. And when we turned onto Sugarloaf, I thought about how every time I ride, make that sharp left turn off Hagerman's onto Sugarloaf, and it's a tough climb, but in my opinion, it is a perfect single speed climb, and it's interesting and engaging, and the light is coming up, and I felt that familiar feeling of wellness and love of the sport and happiness that I was doing this. So there were a lot of the things that I love about this race that were still there. And I remember as I'm riding up, I'm like, oh, this is so good to be on my bike on a cool morning. And, Lisa is right here beside me, or, sometimes ahead of me, sometimes a little bit behind me, doesn't matter, still having a great time. And, Sugarloaf went great. And then down Powerline, it was going, it actually felt fast and it felt good. Powerline's very fast right now. Although I will say, those people who are complaining about Powerline right now being too smooth down at the very bottom, you can tell that all they're going to need to do is wait for another couple of years, because those erosion ruts are coming back fast. And, they, in a couple of years, a good couple of runoffs, and those tricky lines are going to be back. So, a couple of years, come back in 2023, you'll see those ruts are back. After Powerline, I was just stuck behind Lisa. We did not take turns on the pavement at all. It was just me, doing crazy leg spin, trying to stay behind her as she's in a pretty big gear, because she's on a geared full suspension bike, and it's tough for her to not just drop me and leave me on the pavement. That said, we got through it, and then we plugged in. We actually have been listening to audiobooks when we are riding together. A couple of Bluetooth headphones, and we can listen to a book together. And when that stopped working, and one of the headphones failed, that's when I actually really realized it was like, this is a different kind of day when I am on the Leadville course and I am listening to a book, trying to, keep up energy and interest. It was like, I shouldn't be, I shouldn't have been listening necessarily to something like that. I should be having, race focus, race energy. But that wasn't that was the first thing to fail, but it was definitely not the worst thing to fail. At around mile 35, the lockout, the cable to the lockout on my front fork, on my front suspension, is snapped. And it turns out that the Lefty Ocho fork, the year that I have, when that cable goes, it defaults it goes into a locked mode. And I was on a rigid single speed, starting just about the time we hit the single track, right before, that short section of single track before you hit the pavement. Fully rigid bike. That was not fun.
Yeah, you're on a fully rigid single speed without the benefit, without the weight loss benefit. So you're carrying all the weight.
Yep.
But you were still rigid. That seems to defy logic, that when a cable breaks, when a suspension cable breaks, that it defaults to lockout. And that, that doesn't seem to make too much sense. But
I understand that Cannondale has fixed that for the 2020 model, and thank goodness for that. But it never even occurred to me that might be the case. But it was kind of funny. I mean, briefly when that happened, while I was on that single track and while I was on the pavement and climbing up that dirt road, past Coach's Corner and toward Twin Lakes Dam, I was thinking, well, this is fantastic. I love a rigid single speed, because I had only been rigid single speeding for a few minutes, 45 minutes or so at that time. And it's like, well, this is great. I'm effective. I'm efficient. I am great at this. And I had not done any downhilling at all for the day yet. Yeah. And I was about to be schooled in a big way. So anyway, Hadi, we roll into Twin Lakes Dam, find the cooler, our couple of gallons of water, and I missed having you there to take care of me and get me through the feed really fast. But, that is kind of what we were doing. We were just doing it on our own. Yep.
Well, sorry I couldn't be in Leadville for your feeds, but, that's part of what made this trip cool, I think, and a challenge. Get around the Leadville course on your own. And like during a regular year, you do so without bonking. At least I hope so.
Yeah, we never did bonk. Lisa and I each executed our own feeds. Lisa, she was going with goo. She really likes those new goo gulps. For me, it was all Martin energy gels and Martin 160. All of it is just, I was pretty much on the straight Martin plan, and it worked great for me. And all of that, of course, is available from our friends at the feed.
Yeah, Martin's a terrific way to travel light. Like if you're self-supported like Fatty was, I mean, that's a great way to not only carry your hydration, but your calories, because it all comes in your bottle and you can really get most of it that way. So if you're trying to go light, if you're doing something self-supported, again, keep Morton in mind. Terrific stuff. Morton is one of the many great products at the feed. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville and sign up for that 15% discount. Okay, so here we are, Columbine. It's eventually coming is the downhill section at the top. You've got a broken cable to your lefty fork, and it's left you in lockout mode. Did you try to fix this problem?
Oh, there was no fixing it, at least not without a serious set of tools. And we've talked before about how good I am at fixing things in general. So no, I know enough to remove the cable and get it so that it wasn't in my way. But no, I was, that was how it is. And I talked with folks afterward and found out that it wasn't something that I would have been able to fix myself. I will say, and just sort of quick plug for our friends at Cycles of Life that the day after this ride, I took my Niner into Cycles of Life and said, "Hey, I'm going to be here another couple of days. I want to do some mountain biking. Is there any chance that you guys can fit me in the next couple of days?" And they said, "No problem." And they had it to me before the end of the day. Cycles of Life, not a paid promo, not a paid spot. They are just a really great bike shop in Leadville. Go in, they'll take care of you. Good guys. So anyway, back to Columbine. I love the first couple of miles of Columbine, and on a single speed, I love it even more. When I think about this race, I think of Powerline and I think of Columbine. And when I think of Columbine, I think of that first 4 miles or so where you're just it's a tough grade and you are at a high altitude. But if you can put your mind to it and you can just sort of grind it away and really, it is what this race is really all about. And it just kind of disappeared for me. I was just really feeling the groove more than I did any more of the rest of the day. It's kind of that mountain biking trance that you just love.
The only reason I love Columbine is was missing for you this year, and that is the race coming down. The one thing that keeps me motivated on that mountain is I play a little game. I wonder who's going to be in the lead. Can I guess? Will it be Todd Wells? Will I see my good friend Nate Whitman? Will I see somebody else? Will I be surprised? Will Howard Grotz be there? Who's going to be the first female? Years back, it was Reba. So that was the thing that always kept me going. Somehow you have fallen in love with a beast of a mountain, and good on you, because that thing is, I don't care where you like it, tree section, above tree line, that is a tough one.
Well, I love climbing, you know that, and I am really a fan of high altitude. I feel happy when it is, the smell of the pine and just the rocking, the rowing that comes with the single speeding. It's just fantastic. But I mean, really, most of this just has to do with a love of 20 plus years of having done this for a long time. That said, with all those happy thoughts in place, about the time we hit the goat trail, I stopped for a second and I had to get off the bike and was pushing it because it was just too hard for me because of the fitness thing I was talking about. And Lisa rides by me, and then when she has to dismount and she's pushing, I sort of hustle a little bit, catch up with her, and she says, "You know what? I don't ever want to do this race again." And I was like, "What?" So, it made me start thinking, Hadi. I was like, so not do I ever want to do this race again? Because I definitely do. For me, it's not that really a question. But it was making me ask the question, is there a good reason for me to be doing this now? Because my wife is miserable. She's not having fun. Do I want to be on this course right now? I started and I just... you know how it is. You start letting negative thoughts wedge into your mind as you are going up Columbine, and it will find a way to take over your brain. I know that, I guess I don't know that for sure that that's happened to you, but I will ask, has that happened to you before?
Where I've doubted being there at all?
Well, yeah. And on Columbine in particular, where suddenly you're just like, what am I doing here?
Well, for me, it happened before Columbine. That's where I stopped, because I knew that mentally I was not prepared to be in that race. I actually had the fitness to be there, but mentally I was just not into the race. And I stopped. I said, that's it. So yeah, I know what that feeling's about. But Leadville is just, people really put a lot into, what gear am I going to run? What tires am I going to run? How fit I'm going to be. But I think and I don't know if you agree with this, I think it's more of a mental game, that place.
I 100% agree. And it is never, I have always been really good at that mental part of the game until this time, with it not having been something where I had a lot on the line, where I didn't feel like I had, where I had brought, something essential and urgent to this. I said, for the first time ever, I was thinking to myself, it's like, well, what am I doing here? What is the point? Why am I, what business do I have doing this? What am I accomplishing? What point am I trying to prove? And those kinds of thoughts, man, in that rarefied air, it is really easy to let those take over your brain. So I was having a rough time there. That said, and, Elisa was obviously having that difficulty as well. But she was still faster than me. Lisa's, after doing the Lead Woman last year, she hasn't been trying as hard this year, or has been tireder, or if there's just long-term recovery. But she has, she's been saying, "Oh boy, I just am not feeling it." And nevertheless, in spite of her thinking that she was not as fast as usual and not as fit as usual, she was still faster than I am, and definitely fitter than I am. And she was dropping me. And I got to say, it's amazing and exciting to see someone that you love be so fast and fast and fit and faster than you are. So I loved seeing that, but I was also thinking, I got to step it up, or she's going to drop me for the rest of the day.
You're going to be out there on a rigid single speed all alone if you're not careful.
All by myself. So on Columbine, that was really the only time we saw other riders the whole day, and I was nowhere. I mean, one of them was pretty fast and caught and was riding with Lisa while I was pushing my single speed up the goat trail. And, so they were on up ahead, and I was just pushing my bike and going, oh man, this is rough. We got to the top, took pictures. We looked at our watches, said, ooh, we are right at 6 hours. We are in danger of not finishing this thing in under 12 hours. Because as you know, your turnaround at Leadville, multiply that by 2, and you're pretty close to what your finish time is going to be. It's surprisingly accurate. So we start descending after taking a picture or two, and it just hurt so bad, Hottie. Descending on a rigid bike down Columbine just hurts. Not just the first couple of miles either, but the whole brake bump thing going down the wide dirt road part. I was just so rattled by the time we got to the bottom. And it was one of those things where that negativity that I had kind of let start infecting my brain, it was in full bloom at that point. I was preparing my speech that I was going to give to Lisa on why we should quit.
But then, something happened.
Yeah. Lisa is, meanwhile, she's on a full suspension Epic. She's feeling great again. She doesn't want to quit anymore. She's like, I committed to doing this thing. I want to finish it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then something great happened. Blake, who had ridden the first 15 miles or so with us, and then had, gotten back to our Airbnb before the battery on his e-bike ran out. He had gotten in his truck and driven out to Twin Lakes Dam. And so, to our surprise, because we had not expected this, he was waiting by our cooler, just, hanging out to say, give us a little bit of moral support. And it was the greatest thing. I thought, because as I was rolling up, I was thinking, I don't know if I can do Sugarloaf coming down. I don't know if I can ride down those brake bumps on Hagerman's. I don't know if I can ride down St. Kevin's on a rigid bike. But I did have another bike back at the apartment that I could send Blake back to if he was willing to go and swap me. By the time, when we caught up to him, I figured, maybe at the fish hatchery.
Before you get past Twin Lakes, though,
yeah.
I know that there's private property between the dam and Twin Lakes alternate. How did you guys route around that? Inbound, outbound, inbound, I should say.
Yeah, you do an extra couple miles and you can just go around that on dirt road. It's pretty easy. It adds about, I think about 5 miles total to the day. And it's not especially steep, and it's definitely, it's a wide dirt road. And there are a number of ways that you can just download the GPX or whatever and route that around. So that was a very easy thing to do. But I mean, it does make it so that it's the Leadville 108 instead of the Leadville 103.
So you get to the dam, and Blake is there at the dam, and the ice chest is there, and what? Yeah. Then we have a new plan going into play.
Yeah. So the new plan is we were going to continue on, and then hopefully, get through pipeline inbound, and then do the pavement after that, and then he was going to drive out to the fish hatchery with my felt, my geared bike that still had working front suspension. And that way I could do the final quarter of the ride with a bike that had front suspension. And this was important to me for a reason I had not expected and it really had not hoped. I was thinking, I don't know if I can do if I could do Powerline on a single speed this year. My fitness was I hate to say, but I was worried that I was going to have to walk, 3/4 of the Powerline climb.
Yep. So the Felt Doctrine has suspension and gears. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But otherwise, is a lot like the Niner. I mean, otherwise it's a qualified race bike.
Oh yeah, I have ridden the Felt Doctrine in Leadville before. And it has a lot of things in common with my Niner, starting with the Envy stuff. First of all, they both have Envy M525 wheels, right? They both have the Envy seat post with the 20 millimeter setback. They both have the Envy 100 millimeter stem. And they both have an Envy bar. And that's actually one of the things that I really noticed as a huge difference. I had been riding with that M6 bar on my Niner, which is 780 millimeters. My Doctrine has the M5 bar, which is 760 millimeters. And that's a total of only, 20 millimeters, which is, I think, less than an inch, but you really feel that difference. And, for a single speed or for, a big downhill bike, 780 is really nice. And of course you can cut it down, but either way, just, fantastic gear on both of those bikes. So, I mean, whether I was on my Niner or on my Felt, I was loving the fact that I had such great wheels and components for Envy.
Nice to have a backup, an Envy backup in this case, total Envy setup for Fatty. Nice to hear. And of course you can get more info on Envy's bars, stems, wheels, and seat posts over at Envy. That's ENVE.com.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have an A bike and I have an A++ bike. So I do okay. One thing that my Felt Doctrine does not have in common with a Niner Air 9 RDO?
Well, the Felt has gears, so we know that.
Yes. Oh, gears made a big difference to me later in the day. Although whether for the single speed or for the gear, they are both total Shimano setups. And I'm actually going to want to talk a little bit more at some point of how much I love Shimano XT Di2, which is what I have on my Felt. But there is one thing from Shimano that my Niner has that I really found myself wishing that my Felt had within moments of when I swapped over onto that bike.
Moments. Shimano. Pedals, maybe?
Nope.
Oh, brakes and rotors. Or
No.
chain? Cranks and rotors. I'm guessing brakes.
Nope. The Shimano across the board on both of the Niner and the Felt. It was actually the saddle, Hottie. I've been rolling with the Shimano /Pro Griffin on my Niner, but I have a different brand saddle. It's actually one that I used to use all the time before I discovered the Griffin on my Felt. And I got to tell you, it is a pretty strong testament to a saddle's fit to, after 7 hours on it, to swap to a different saddle. I instantly wish that I could have been back on that Griffin Carbon.
Well, naturally, saddles are a very personal choice. How did you wind up on the Griffin?
Yeah, believe it or not, it was using the saddle selector tool on pro-bikegear.com. It's right there in the top menu bar. It asks you a few questions about how you sit, where or whether you have numbness, what kind of riding you do. And it gives you what was, in my case, the best saddle recommendation I have ever had.
I've been through that saddle selector process myself too. And if I remember correctly, whatever saddle it does recommend, you have the option of what width to get.
Yeah, it does. And that's actually the genius of the Pro Setup Hottie. And, and it's also when you want to get your local dealer involved. So you narrow down what kind of saddle you want, and then you go local to get the correct width. In my case, it recommended the Griffin or Griffin Carbon, same everything except for the rails. And the 132 width is pretty much my ideal saddle, both in my case for road and mountain bike. And I really wish I would have bought more than one because I really missed having it on my felt last Wednesday.
Yep, you've got one you love now, so stock up. You know what?
Oh, I will.
They've got more. To see what saddle works for you and for Fatty to go get more of the Griffins, he's going to go to pro-bikegear.com.
Yep, absolutely. So once I had that felt, and actually I got it a little sooner than I expected, because Blake, he's a smart guy who understands when, that I needed to change bikes if I could. And so instead of him just driving over to the fish hatchery, he looked on Find a Friend, saw on my phone that I was like, oh, well, they are still on their way. And so he drove toward us and met us just before Pipeline inbound, swapped bikes, and we rode through, and this was the craziest thing, Hottie. Just as we came out of Pipeline inbound, Lisa and I were talking to each other and saying, well, I think there is a tailwind. I think we are going to actually have a tailwind that is going to push us toward Powerline. And I'm sure you've ridden before where you have a headwind that you're having to fight on that pavement between Pipeline inbound and Powerline that is just incredibly demoralizing. The thought of a tailwind was so exciting, so great, such a morale boost. And then a dust devil hit us and just about knocked both of us off of our bikes. Have you ever been hit by a dust devil?
Not a dust devil. I've experienced some crosswinds before, but not a little ground mini tornado like a dust devil, which must be pretty wild. It came from behind us, and so we weren't even aware that this was going, that it was going to hit us, but it was pretty strong, and it was a complete surprise. We are having a chat about possible tailwind, and then suddenly we are both completely off the trail, having been knocked, several feet over. Neither of us fell, but both of us put a foot down, and the thing hit us. We were in it, and then it went by us, and we just sort of watched it tearing up the brush away from us. But yeah, I've never ever been in one of those before. But for a second, I thought we were both going down. So then onto the pavement and up Powerline, and I gotta say, we haven't done this a lot because I've been on single speed for this last year, but we were both on bikes with Shimano XT Di2, and having two bikes shifting XT Di2, with that electronic shifting sound is pretty cool. And I remember taking note of that. Though I got to say, once we hit that first climb, there wasn't going to be any more shifting for a long time. Lisa just dropped me as she went up the power line. That first big climb, I was so impressed. She was just flying, climbing so strong. The Doctrine, by the way, is a hardtail for you?
Yes, the Felt Doctrine is another hardtail. So
she's got more bike than you, and she's out climbing you. Something's going on there.
Well, that's Lisa for you. That said, I am very proud to say that I did not put a foot down on the power line. As tired as I was and as rough a day as I had been having, I still I cleaned the power line, Hottie. So, I'm gonna give myself kudos when I deserve them, and for this, I definitely feel like I deserved them. I would not have been able to clean it if I had been on the single speed. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, that's the second year in a row for you then, because as I recall, last year you cleaned it too in the race, which is pretty cool.
I did, and I cleaned it a lot faster. But to clean it at all is always feels like quite a thing. And then we get and we're dropping down Sugarloaf, and my wrists were just wrecked by the time we came down that. Lisa flew away from me on her full suspension bike. I was very unhappy on a hardtail. I had been, having been on rigid for long enough that my wrists had really taken a beating. I think I thought for about the 1,000th time this day. It was like, people who say this is basically a road race, they are welcome to come bring their road bikes and give it a shot. This is a rocky, bumpy, punishing mountain bike course.
Yeah, your body, it's a full body affair out there. And places like the Sugarloaf Descent will instantly prove that to you. You just take a pounding going through there when you're mile 80 something, and the rattle fest that's going on. You're doing all you can just to keep the bike underneath you.
Yep. So after that, Lisa was kind enough to wait for me at where the Sugarloaf Descent meets Hagerman, and we rode down Hagerman's together. The pavement up to Carter, the Carter aid station, I always call it, but this time it's just to Carter. That's sort of my style. And, I was able to get into my standing climbing groove and felt better, had a decent descent down in St. Kevin's. And then as we were going up the boulevard, I saw 12 hours tick over. And I was like, wow, it has been 12 hours. And, that's since we had rolled away from the apartment we were staying at, not the starting line. And there had been, an extra 5 miles in the course, but it had been 12 hours. We had been out there for a long time. And then a really cool thing happened. Blake, who is a pro at using Find a Friend, he had seen that we were coming up it. And so he rode down the boulevard, and the three of us finished riding across where the finish line would have been together. And so that, it was really nice to have the three of us finish that together. And, Blake, without his help, I honestly don't think I would have finished the day. With the single speed, I just, I didn't, with it being rigid, it would have been rough. So, thanks and kudos to him for making it so that on this non-race day, I was still able to get across the finish line.
Yeah, and you crossed at a time of day that must have seemed, normally that time of day on a Saturday, race day Leadville or whatever day Leadville, you've been home for 3-4 hours by then.
Normally,
so it must have been a little weird. Yeah, you must have been a little weird coming across at that time. Nobody there, no finisher's medal, but still kind of a cool scene.
Some pride.
Yeah.
And our riding time had been 11 hours, 11 minutes and 1 second. So I kind of wish we would have taken 10 seconds longer. So it had been 11, 11, 11. That would be kind of cool. But we'd been out there by the time we got back to our apartment and pressed the stop on our GPSs, 12 hours and 18 minutes. And it made me think about some of the real questions, about, what are you paying for when you enter a race? You're paying for commitment and intensity and energy and camaraderie. And I had kind of, I think, maybe not given enough weight to how much each of those matter. The fact that with this being something we were just doing instead of really racing, it made that day so much harder, Hottie.
Harder?
Yes. I would say this has, it's for sure been my slowest Leadville 100. It's even at my least fit, back when I lived in Seattle, I did it in about 11 and a half hours. This time, it took me an hour longer than that. And boy, it really makes me remember and, give new emphasis to something I think probably I've given lip service to for a long time. But those folks who are finishing in the 12-hour to 13-hour range, they are putting so much heart, so much soul, so much of everything it takes to finish a race into it that, I think I'm never going to underestimate or minimize ever again. So in a lot of ways, doing it this way on a Wednesday with nobody around to see it or to say, you got to finish this, it's, in a ways it gave me some new appreciation for the course and the mental toughness it requires to do this thing.
Yeah. So when you say harder, you do mean from the mental side it was harder, because physically you were out there a long time, and that takes its toll, obviously. The longer your day drags on, the more physically tired you're going to get, although going fast has its own toll as well. But
Sure.
you're talking about mentally, this was harder than any of your other attempts.
Yeah, I think mentally it was my toughest. I wouldn't say it was Lisa's mentally toughest. You remember her story from her first Leadville 100 and the incredible rain, and there was a lot there. But for me, and I think you were 100% correct when you say that Leadville is really more about the mental game than the physical game. I understood that at an intellectual level, ironically, but not at the gut level that is required. And that is something I think when we go into season 4 or talk about other rides, other races, we got to talk more about that, because I think that really is the missing ingredient for the people who don't finish the race versus the ones who do. It is how much of the mental game have you brought to this race?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jeremy Horgan-Kabelski even talked about that in the Race Across the Sky movie. He talks about the altitude and how either you embrace that or it freaks you out and you kind of get crippled by it. And yeah, again, altitude has a physical thing too, but there's probably a mental approach that can be taken to overcome what are major hurdles at Leadville. They stack them up there, but in the end, if you find a way to think your way through that race, you can overcome and move beyond each obstacle and get yourself back to 6th and Harrison, which the two of you did admirably.
We did. And I think that I'm going to bring a lot of the lessons I learned this time, and I'm definitely going to bring some new fitness to it. It's I think that I had kind of started getting a little complacent. Having done this race so many times, I've kind of thought, I had stopped thinking in terms of this being a truly difficult race. And I thought that, I just have this race dialed. There's some things I will not be taking for granted in 2021. I can definitely tell you that, Audie.
And one of them would be a lefty fork. You want to make sure that thing is working.
I guarantee. I don't want to say anything bad about anyone or anything, because that fork has been fantastic in my training. It was just a piece of bad luck. But yeah, I'm going to definitely be doing some things to make sure that no matter what, I have suspension up front for the entirety of my race. My old arthritic wrists simply cannot handle doing 100 miles rigid anymore. They just can't.
Okay, well, should we wrap this up then?
Let's do. I've told an awful lot of story here.
All right, Season 3, Episode 20 is in the books. The Leadville Podcast presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your other cycling friends, and please support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Yeah, we do appreciate that. Meanwhile, if you have questions or you've got ideas for us, head over to Leadville100podcast.com. In the comment section, you can get in touch. That is also, I will say, where you can find a link to our Slack workspace and jump into our never-ending Leadville conversation.
Follow us on social media if you like. Fatty is on Twitter quite a bit. @FatCyclist is his handle. You can find me, Hottie, at Michael Hutton on Twitter, or find us on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants Group. We love that spot. Great place to exchange ideas about the race we love. Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening. Fatty, where will we see you next?
The 2021 starting line.